in bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the third episode of the Camp Corner podcast. We're really glad to be back.
So for those of you who might not know me, my name is Brynn and Kiana is here with me, and we're very excited for this episode to have Spirit Lake Camp's Board of Directors joining us. So to start us off, we're wondering if you could introduce yourselves, maybe explain a little bit about your role and how you got into the position and how long you've been with camp for.
I guess I'll start. I am the chair. My name is Janice Franklin. I am the chair of the board of directors. I have been chair just since this January. I have been on the board for the better part of 15 years, maybe. There were a couple of years I was off the board, but I think I've been on the board for 14 or 15 years. I started at Sparrow Lake as a camper when I was 8 years old. I was a camper until I was a CIT at 15, and then I was on staff the summers that I was 16, 17, and 18. So I had 11 years in total as a camper or staff. And then my children attended Sparrow Lake Camp. They started as campers when one was 8 and one was 11. They were campers for a number of years. They were both staff as well. My son was on site staff and my daughter was a counselor, and then she was on sailing staff.
Oh, thank you.
All right, I'll go
Okay.
next. Anyhow, that was very impressive, Janice. Yeah. So, my name is Andrew Blair / Jughead, of course, as everybody knows me at camp. And I'm in charge. Well, I should use that term loosely. I help out with property and trying to keep the camp from falling apart. I started at Sparrow Lake back in 94, I think, or 93. No, wrong numbers. I think it was actually, 86.
Must have been 10 years before
I
that.
started there in 86. Yes, I never was a camper there. I only was told about the fine establishment, and in my university years came to work as a counselor. And this goes back to the days of Hawkeye and Trapper and all these good souls. So participated as a counselor, absolutely loved it. Had a whole bunch of crazy people, Ellen being one of them, that we all worked together and had great fun. Did that for 2 full-time summers as a counselor. And then my father told me I had to make money, which was very sad. So then I actually only came back to camp for the last session of the following 2 summers because I love camp. And after that, through the Treehouse reunion, attended Still Camp every 2 years, just to sort of stay connected. The people or staff we went to camp with have all stayed in touch over the years, and Ellen can remember what number of anniversary we were at, 30 or 35 years. There's some insane, crazy number.
I try not to remember that. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a while, but we've all had good fun. I have 3 daughters, and the youngest has been at camp helping out in various shapes and form. And the other ones have participated in various shapes and forms. They all play competitive sports. It's far too silly. Never really had a lot of time to get up to camp, but they have at least had some exposure to it in some shape or form. And they've always attended Treehouse reunions. So in some ways, they've been exposed to Sparrow because, let's be honest, Sparrow is like the best place in the world. Come on, Janice, you know it.
Yeah.
I think outside of that, yeah, that's probably about it. So as I say, once again, my role is with property, try and provide oversight to make sure the camp isn't going to fall apart, and we're hopefully sort of keeping one step ahead of everything that's going on. Over to you, Ellen.
Okay, so I'm Ellen Weir. If we start back in the mists of time, I started as a camper when I was 8, and was a camper all the way up until I actually wasn't a CIT till I was 17, because my father decided he should take the family to Scotland for a summer, and I missed my CIT year. But I came, first thing I did the next year was come back and be a CIT, and I was staff for 3 years. And as Jughead said, there was a thought in my brain that maybe I should get a job that actually made money. so I left it very late, and then decided that no, really, I needed to go back to camp. And our camp director, Hawkeye, said, "I've given away your job. Like, you can't do it." So actually, I then went off and worked for 4 years at an Easter seal camp with kids with disabilities, which made complete sense because that was what my career path was going to be. And then in 86, so you do the math, Jug, you're the math guy. 86, we did our first treehouse reunion and have been going on through that ever since. I've been on the board mostly because Janice dragged me on, not kicking and screaming, invited me to join the board 11 and a half years ago. So I've been on it since then. I muddled around for a few years just trying to figure out where I was going to fit in, but ultimately what I'm doing is I'm the director of the HR committee. So there you go. That's me. Still very involved in Sparrow Lake.
Well done. Definitely longtime Sparrow Lakers. I guess the next kind of question is, what do you guys love about this camp in particular, and what kind of makes you passionate about your role?
Sure. What can you say the second part of that question again?
And just what makes you passionate about your role?
Well, I'll start since no one else is saying anything. I mean, need we say more about Sparrow Lake? Like, it's just like the best place in the world. So I don't know what else you can comment on that one. Maybe Ellen's got a thought, but I mean, it's just, it has, I always find what's neat about Sparrow Lake is it's very, the setting is absolutely beautiful. There's always been lots of spirit at Sparrow, and it's just a neat place to be fortunate enough to spend some time there and really connect with your inner self and build confidence and all those great attributes that spending time at camp will do for you. And for me, as Ellen will know, I love fixing stuff. So being in charge of property, I mean, it just doesn't get any better. I get to fix things, or at least I get to provide thoughts on how to fix things. So it's a no-brainer, really, when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. And I echo Jughead. I mean, in terms of Sparrow Lake is the home of my heart and is overall is the safe space that we need to learn ultimately as a child. I mean, as a kid, when I was growing up, it was a safe space to explore what I wanted to become or what I wanted to do, learn how to work with other kids in team building and everything else. And that's never changed. It still is the place of my heart, and it's still a safe place in my vision of how these things are. And certainly an HR side of things, if I think about that as camp as being the best place on earth and it's a safe place that you can do anything, I think being part of HR, that actually helps to do that, because I want it to be the home of the heart of everybody else.
Yeah.
I think for me, I think so much of who I am now and the core, like sort of my core values come from camp. And when I get really busy at work and I get really overwhelmed and I kind of forget, I'm a vice principal and I sort of get caught up in things and I forget why I'm there. And then I pull back and think about, like, who am I and what really matters to me. And that's what came out of camp for me, sort of like the focus on children, the sort of that spirit in me, that caring about other people. I've also loved the connections through camp. And I think my last year as a camper, Ellen was my counselor, but Brynn's aunt was also my counselor. And then when my kids worked at camp, Brynn and her brother were there as campers, and those sort of ongoing. There's some other people on staff that were there when my children were campers, and their parents were staff with me or counselors when I was there, and that ongoing connection has just been amazing. As for what makes me passionate about my role, I guess I feel so strongly that camp is so good for kids, and a lot of camps are very, very expensive, and only the wealthy can go there. And then there are camps that sort of cater to families that are really struggling financially and really need a lot of help. And Sparrow Lake is kind of in the middle, and it's a camp that we aim to have it a camp that most people can afford, so that kids can really have that experience. And one thing that really strikes me is after the first 2 weeks, the first session that my son was on staff, I overheard him talking to my daughter on the first weekend that they were home on a break. And I heard him say to her, "I like who I am better at camp." And that to me just summed up everything about camp. And that's what I want kids to have, because I mean, I'm at school and I see kids with mental health issues, and I see kids that live in stressful situations, and I see kids whose priorities in lives are sort of devoid of any kind of value and separated from any concept of sort of like caring for others or service. And I love the fact that that all comes together at camp and maybe gives kids an environment that they might not otherwise have.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, like I've talked to a lot of people, and a lot of things that you guys are saying are quite common. Like Sparrow's considered like a home away from home. And I know myself, like who I am is greatly rooted in what I learned out at camp. So I agree with like everything that you guys are saying. I think a lot of people do.
Yeah, when people say that camp impacts like themselves, I think it holds true to everyone who's ever been to camp and been to Sparrow Lake. Like coming out of my first 2-week session, I went home and even my parents were like, "I see a change in you. Like you just seem so much more comfortable and open and just happy."
All right, so I'm gonna move on now to our next question. So I think this is a bit of a fun one. Feel free to get creative. So if all of the barriers and obstacles could be removed, like for example, money or time, what project would you like to do for the camp? It can be like anything.
I'm not sure that's a fair thing to ask the board members, because we spend time thinking about that all the time. How do we make it the best place ever, without destroying what's already there? I don't know. I mean, that to me is it. There is a certain feeling of living in a cabin and the bugs bite you at night and it's cold or it's not, or it's too hot. I was telling somebody a story the other day about the first time I ever got stung by a wasp. And the cabin I was in, I was a counselor, but the cabin I was in had a wasp nest up at the top of the peak. And the wasps were fine as long as you didn't bang the door. And so a bunch of them had been going in and out, banging the door, and I did a stop it. Went out and did that sort of like, what are you doing? And as I got out to the porch, a wasp came down and stung me on the neck, on my arm, and on my leg. 3 different, I mean, I'm assuming it's 3 different ones, but it's like, you know what? I could not have that memory. It's all part of what goes on, I was never scared of bugs, so it wasn't a big deal. My sister, who's a few years younger, I always used to laugh, like she'd go to a cabin and there's going to be a spider in there and she'd freak out. I'm not, oh, get over it. It's country. It's the world. It's outside. It's the outdoors. Anyway, okay, I've blobbered on. You guys talk.
No, you're right. It's true. I mean, you could have water skiing, outdoor BMX courses, and the list could go on and on and on. Everybody has their own. Each cabin has a golf cart for driving around. Oh, you could have all sorts of fun. But at the end of the day, it's all about the spirit that really is what makes Sparrow. I still remember to this day all these crazy special days, Ellen, as you will recall, that we used to do. We had people swinging from rafters and boats moored out bay to see what the heck was going on, because we used to do some pretty crazy stuff. But that's really what makes Sparrow or camp in general fun, and that's what brings you back. It's those moments where for a brief period in time you are somewhere else, and it's just such an amazing experience. And you can have all the stuff in the world and all the newest buildings, but that's what makes camp special. That's my interpretation.
I think for me,
Both of
I
you.
also would like to see camp sort of remain simple, just focused on the people, not a whole bunch of fancy stuff. I have heard of camps where they have just really fancy everything. However, I will also say that it's such a beautiful property, and it strikes me as such a shame that it's only once a year. So if I had unlimited funds, I would want to convert a couple of buildings so that, like maybe the dining hall, maybe the rec hall, so that you could use it at least 3 seasons, but maybe even 4, because I think it'd be a fabulous place to have sort of an outdoor ed center, or a place that people could access and use. I'd like to see some winterized buildings that would allow not the camp to be fully open, but at least use by smaller groups throughout the year.
Agreed. I think that's good. And we'd have to get enough money to get people snowmobiles to get in from the gate.
Oh, good point. Good point. Well, actually, no, we get those giant snow buses. So you can drive
Snowcat?
those.
No, what we need
Snowcat.
is snowshoes. They get snowshoes, and remember, we're going to keep it simple. Snowshoes,
Right.
cross-country skis.
Yeah. Well, you could ski behind the snow buses. That would be the key. All good fun.
Okay, I do have a question for you, I guess everyone. You guys were talking about like how you just have crazy special days that were awesome and people would like come in on boats. So Kiana and I are like the virtual programmers this summer, and hopefully we'll come back next summer as a programmer. So do you have any tips for us or suggestions on what we can do to make special days like just 100% awesome?
Think outside the box. There's really very little you can't do. What we used to do, we had Ellen, you got to
I
help
got
me.
married at camp.
Right, I forgot.
She's not married now, but
I'm not. I've never legally been married, but I did get married at camp.
That's right. We had the Blues Brothers. Remember, Ellen?
Yes, I absolutely remember. I'm related to one of them.
That's right, you are.
I remember a special day where someone, I don't know if there's still float planes that land at that end of the lake, but
Yes.
it was someone pretended to be a scientist, and I can't actually remember the theme of the special day, but there was someone that actually came in by float plane, and got off the plane and came in by canoe, and they were the scientist for whatever special day.
Scott Forrest?
No, it was after that.
Okay.
Yeah, because it was my maybe second or third year as staff, second year as staff probably. One thing I remember very specifically, and I am sticking to it, that when I was probably the year I was 8 or 9, we had a special day that was a carnival, and there was probably a 17-year-old counselor who dressed up as a fortune teller and told fortunes, and she read my palm, and she told me that I had an extraordinarily long lifeline and that I'm going to live till I'm 103, and I have chosen to believe her, and I'm determined that I'm going to live to 103 because that fortune teller told me so on that special day.
I believe it.
I also remember as a camper, I remember a special day where we had a Christmas, and every camper put out a stocking, and we had turkey for dinner, and like it was a really amazing special day for me as a camper. That's the one that really sticks out in my mind.
I mean, a lot of the times back in the day, some of the most successful ones were ones that we were using sort of popular culture. That's the best way to put it. So our camp director, for instance, was Obi-Wan Kenobi on a Star Wars.
That was when Star Wars first came out, like 1,000 years ago.
That was the biggest thing since sliced bread, you know. Doing events that we had a bunch of staff that were musicians, and bringing in some of their friends and doing a big concert at the end of the day related to what it was that you were doing. But there's why other boats come in, because they're like, oh man, there's really good music. And you look out around the swimming area and there are 50 boats all parked out listening to what the music is. And we're basically having, quote, a rock concert, but we're having campfire and everything else too. So it's really thinking about what's something that would strike a chord for your campers.
Making
I
it
don't know.
Yeah.
Next year you get to have COVID day. Oh no, don't do that.
And I think as staff, what I really remember is almost like sharing in a fantasy with kids.
Yeah.
Like just for a special day, you would enter into some kind of fantasy world. And I mean, the kids know that it's probably not real, but you kind of you stay in character for the day and just create that world for them for the day. And it's so much fun. And so I think in some ways it almost doesn't matter that much what the theme of the special day is. It's being that fantasy and having the staff really engage with the campers and really kind of believe in what they're doing and carry through on what they're doing, and that's what sort of really makes it magic.
Yeah. Thank you.
I feel like that kind of brings us to our next question of what is your guys' favorite memory related to working or just being at camp? It's hard to
favorite memory. Okay.
There's a bit of a list.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It's hard to narrow it down to just one. A lot of it has to do with the fun and the
silliness. The silliness.
You know, I mean, okay, I'll give you a specific one. We had a group of us, when we were junior counselors, half of us had been, or more than half of us had been CITs together. So we already had a really strong group of people. And we started something called SWAB.
Oh.
And you'll see that written in the Arts and Crafts building, for instance. And literally it was, what can we do that's harmless, fun, and quiet? And we used to do like commando raids around the place, but we were doing it goofily. And you were always trying not to make any noise where you'd have the staff, the one counselor who was in a cabin would be sitting out on the porch listening to the kids, and we'd be sneaking up on them. But not enough, like obviously enough that we're not going to scare them so they scream when we freak out the kids, right? We're just doing goofy things. But that was that camaraderie that you could do anything you wanted to, and you could go out and do goofy things at night. We weren't in charge, we didn't have to be sitting with the kids. It was our night off of doing that, so let's go off and do something goofy. And it was very obvious. I mean, everybody knew we were doing it. It was not quiet or unknown. Everyone knew we did it. Okay. There you go, guys. Come up with something else.
I think the things that I remember, I mean, like if I think camp, sort of my ideal picture that comes up is, and maybe I really like music. Music has always been really important to me. So like, being a counselor and sitting at campfire and having the kids sort of snuggled into you and your arms wrapped around them and singing together and having the firelight and sort of the moon shimmering on the water and just spending that moment with kids and knowing that they feel safe and that they feel comfortable and that they feel happy and that you're helping them do that. And the other thing too, again, is like kids who think they can't do something. Like I can remember clearly sort of teaching swimming, teaching canoeing, teaching sailing, and having kids say like, no, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. And like you hop in the water with them and you talk them through it and you encourage them. And by the end of the session, they can do it. And just the feeling of pride that you are sending them home with and the feeling of accomplishment, that's a really special memory for me from camp.
Yeah, it's a combination of silliness and then seriousness to some extent, because to Janice's point, campfires always hold a special place in your heart for just being surrounded with a bunch of kids and great friends / counselors, and taking in a campfire at night and everybody singing, and there's just something about that that's a camp thing, right? And then even Vespers, I always enjoy going to Vespers and just taking a minute, to look around and reflect and be thankful for everything I have and everyone around me. And, and then from there, it would go to coming back to my cabin at some point, and some people, not to be mentioned necessarily, have taken everything that was in the cabin and put it outside. So now all of a sudden, my stuff is no longer in the cabin, but rather apparently I'm sleeping outside. No, Ellen didn't know anything about that.
I
and
did
other
not
silly
have
things like
nothing to
various
do with
cars.
that.
No, you didn't. No, I didn't. I didn't say you did. And then, other silly things like moving various staff members' cars around, bless their souls, so that in the morning you'd wake up and discover there'd be a car in the baseball diamonds, and how the heck did that get there? Or a car on the raft, and that was
It was a Mini. It was easy to move.
It was a Mini. Yeah. Brynn, it's a car that I don't think you guys know.
What?
Yeah,
Sorry,
at one
Brynn?
point it ended up. She was asking, was it on a raft? And yes, it did end up at one point on a raft. Remember, Ellen?
Yep.
Yeah, it was on the raft. It got moved. It got moved all over camp. And truthfully, kind of like my stuff, it got moved all over camp as well.
I had nothing to
That's
do with
okay.
your
No,
stuff.
that's what made camp fun. Yeah, I know. I've heard that before. But it went from as silly as doing goofy stuff with friends and Swab running around in the middle of the night. Well, not really. Later.
Later in the night.
To then the other side. Later in the night. Yeah, I'd retract that. Edit that comment. No, just kidding. And to things like Vespers and campfires, and even the dining hall.
Yeah.
Some of my best memories were in the dining hall, singing insane songs, watching everybody sprint everywhere.
Skip around the dining hall.
Yeah. And it was neat. What we really enjoy, or I don't know, what I enjoy is, and this summer will be hard, but normally when you go up to camp, as the board of directors, we get to go up and visit camp in August and see camp in action. Obviously, this year there's a slight problem because there's nobody there. But it's always enjoyable normally sitting in the rec hall, having lunch with the campers. Dining hall. Right idea, wrong building. But just to be able to sit in there, and I always find it's a flashback to the old days when there'd be lots of noise and activity. I never remember it being that loud, but that's a whole other story. But it's just to see everybody jumping up and down, tearing around, singing songs. That just brings back so many great memories. And there's some days when I'm up there in August, I'd love to stay even at night just to take part in a campfire again, because those are the things you miss. But, yeah, we could probably, all three of us, truthfully, Brynn, spend hours telling you stories.
Yeah.
So I'm going to move on to our final question now. What advice would you give someone who is looking to get more involved in the camp or looking to give back to the camp? Either a camper or a parent or just someone out in the community.
We're always looking for help, and we're always looking for money. No, just kidding. There's always
True.
well, it's not entirely. Yeah, not true. There's always opportunities to help out at camp. I mean, there's lots of projects always on the go, so there's no shortage of activities. And we're always looking for people, who if they want to come back and help out at camp and get involved. It's a great opportunity. We've just had some recent board members join who are actually very passionate participants or campers / staff at Sparrow Lake. Janet and Eric are a great example, both very passionate about camp and just joined the board recently and quite actively involved. And it's neat to get their perspective because they were there at a different point in time than I was. So there's lots of opportunities. There's committees. We can always use help. Never say no to help. But
yeah. And we've talked about doing some friend raising. So not fundraising, but fundraising. So we as a group, or there is a group, so not all of us, actually all of us, but right now, but there is a very strong reunion group, which is essentially the staff that were there in the early 80s. And we are sort of a group that were all campers under Hawkeye, and we're called the Treehouse Group because our vision was always to build the treehouse, and we raised the money and got it built on the property because that was a plan for us. But we can't be the only nucleus or the only group of alumni and staff outside of that who are involved, because there's a whole lot of other people that would like to be. So we've been sort of we've done some 2/3 of the steps of getting to the point of actually launching a campaign to do some friend raising. I mean, it's lovely if it becomes fundraising, but I'm guessing neither of you two can actually afford to spend any money. So
that is a fair statement.
That's a fair statement. I mean, honestly, when the treehouse started, the Treehouse group started, we were all either still in university or just out of university, and we had no money at all. So we were working very hard to try and raise money to build this 20,000. We had a design made, and it was like $20,000 was what it was going to cost. It's like, oh my God, we're never going to be able to do this. But we worked at it, and eventually we raised the money to get it made. The difference was we were now 10 years on, and we were busy working, and none of us could take a week off and actually go and build it. So that had been part of our vision as well. But I mean, any people who want to be able to come in and start helping with stuff, there's a place on the website where they can actually add their name as alumni, and we can, quote, harvest that. We'll pull it down and get in touch with them and see what they would like to do.
I think one of the other things that we'd love, well, it's not other, I mean, in connection with that, we'd love to have a better, more complete list of names, years, email addresses. And again, I mean, occasionally, possibly for an ask for money, occasionally, possibly for an ask for skills. So there's lots of times, I mean, if someone is in the trades, and I mean, if there's an electrician who's willing to come up and spend a weekend helping out with something, or if there's someone who's got some building skills, like those kinds of people would be just invaluable if they're willing to spend time. But mostly what I think we would love to have is a greater list of sort of staff throughout the years, so that we can just share with people, this is what's going on at camp, and these are the projects we're working on, and this is what our open house is. Come on in and come on by and have a visit, because I know there are a couple of groups on sort of Facebook Messenger where I've seen people ask, well, I'd love to go and visit camp. When can I do that? And so to try and get
the open house on July. Oh yeah, no.
Not this year. But yeah, try and help people maintain that connection they feel to camp, and maintain their connection with each other. So it'd be really nice to have a more comprehensive list. So, I mean, if anyone kind of wants to ever share with permission kind of their contact list that they have, that would be great to have a better list throughout the years, rather than just sort of, I know the people that I worked with. Ellen and Jughead are a couple of years older than me. They know the people they worked with.
You calling us old? Hang on. You calling us old?
No, I said you're a couple of years older than me, and you're more than a couple of years older than me. Do you want to go into that?
No. Keep it clean. Keep it clean.
I'm the same age as your youngest sister.
Yeah, right. No. I mean, it's a joke. And my younger brother was your sailing instructor. So
yes. And then my daughter was his daughter's sailing instructor.
That's right.
We flip it around.
Anyway, yeah, absolutely. I mean, anybody can, if anybody wants to do stuff, we can find stuff for them to do. And you know, there's a expression in my Rotary side of my life, that donations are time, talent, and treasury. So treasury is donation, but time and talent is a big option as well.
And the other thing that's very easy for people to do is share posts on social media, because I mean, for the camp to, what we need more than anything on an ongoing basis is campers. So if people, I mean, have young children, come to family camp, bring your friends with young children, let people know what a great place it is, so that those kids are interested in coming too. When you see a post and you sort of think, oh, Sparrow Lake, I loved being there, share that post so that anyone you know that has camp age children might consider it. And keep sharing, talk about the camp, and share your love of the camp with other people, because ultimately what's going to keep the camp going forever is keeping it full of campers.
Yes, absolutely.
Fair comment.
All right, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight and sharing all those wonderful points and ideas. We loved having you. So that wraps up the podcast. So to everyone out there who's listening to this, thank you also for joining us. And also for joining us this whole summer. The summer, unfortunately, is coming to a close. So we have a couple last few virtual activities for you to check out on the portal. But thank you for joining us this summer. All right, so that does conclude this podcast. Thank you everyone for listening, and I hope you guys have a great day.
Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Thanks, Brynn. Thanks, Kiana.